Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Canucks, in which the Sharks managed to win 4-0. And before I get into that, I would like to point out that obviously I am in a different location for this filming. It is only for a few days. It is obviously a bit less optimal as I'm forced to get a bit of a different angle to it. You'll notice that I am on a completely different side, of course, but it will only be for a few days, so hopefully you can bear with me. But to this game, maybe that announcement was actually more interesting than what this game was. I called the game previously against the Oilers a pretty boring game in general. I thought, it was Ken Hitchcock-style hockey and stuff. But this one was even more boring, if you could really say that. I mean, this game went by really fast. Definitely a quick game in terms of hockey, and these are two division rivals. Not necessarily the biggest rivalry in place. This isn't a Sharks-Ducks game, but Sharks-Canucks, still you expected a bit more from them. But the Canucks didn't even put up that much of a fight. I mean, you could call this one of the most complete game from the Sharks this season, but while against the Blues that the Sharks shut out, I thought they actually played a solid game compared to the Blues, who also played decent. They just weren't good enough. Against the Canucks, the Sharks played well, but the Canucks just looked lost. I don't even know what to say about the Canucks. They were on, I think, a 7-game losing streak. It's now 8 games. They just don't seem to be able to do anything right at this point, and they definitely did not look that great in this game. But scoring for the Sharks put up 3 power play goals in this game. Logan Couture with the first one, Timo Meier with the second one, getting his 13th of the year. He hasn't scored in a while, so it's nice to see him get back on the score sheet. Then Erik Karlsson gets his second, so maybe the floodgates have indeed opened. And of course, Melker Karlsson gets his first of the season. So moving on to what I'd like to talk about, it has to start once again here with the goaltender, this time Aaron Dell. I said that it would have been interesting to see which one of the goalies would have started tonight, as there is another game in Vegas tomorrow. But it was Aaron Dell getting the call here tonight. I thought the Canucks were more of an offensive team than the Golden Knights would be. Maybe I was wrong because they really didn't get much generated. But it was still a solid game from Dell. He had to make a couple of nice saves. Brendan Dillon gave the puck away to Leipzig at a point, and he sort of had a breakaway, you could definitely call it. So Dell had to come up huge there. He had a nice poke check, I think, also on Leipzig in this game. Otherwise, the Canucks really didn't get much going, so it wasn't some sort of spectacular game again from Dell, but I don't know what it is, but it seems as though the defense seems to just play a lot better from the Sharks when Dell is in net. I mean, the past 3 games that the Sharks have played against the Blues, the Oilers, and the Canucks. Against the Blues and the Canucks, they had some very solid defense. Against the Oilers, not as much so. So, while tonight it was the Canucks, who I thought were just really bad. Again, Dell didn't have to be spectacular. However, if the defense is playing better in front of Dell, and Dell is still looking decent, he had a few rebound troubles in this game, as he did against the St. Louis Blues, but not yet a worry, since of course he hasn't led in a game in over 2 games at this point. So it'll be interesting to see who then starts once this back-to-back is over, going, I think they'll be back on the road after the Vegas game, if I'm not mistaken. But maybe Dell actually does get the start. Now, with 2 shutouts in a row, it's going to be a bit hard for DeBoer to ignore that. Next is both Karlssons, and I will start with obviously the most important one. Melker Karlsson gets his first goal of the season. Maybe not the most important one, but the most interesting one to talk about. Melker Karlsson gets his first goal of the season. A lot of people were surprised that it was Antti Suomela who got scratched this game for Radil. People were saying Melker Karlsson probably should have been the odd man out. Of course, the penalty kill was still decent with him and everything like that, but he only had a single point this season. He does finally get on the score sheet. It was a pretty nice tip. I'm not sure if anyone's going to really forgive him at any point for, now that he has a goal, all of a sudden everything's better. Keep Melker Karlsson in the lineup, but I guess it's still nice to see him get on the score sheet. And then I guess I'll also talk about the other Karlsson, Erik Karlsson. He had another fantastic game. 3 points, obviously, very, very nice to see. He's now had multiple games in a row. I think he has finally arrived. I've been sort of careful in these past couple of games saying that. I think at this point now you can expect some rather consistent performances again. No real defensive mistakes. He was solid offensively. It wasn't, let's say, a spectacular 3-point performance, right? The first assist he got on, I think, the Couture goal wasn't like a beautiful assist or anything like that. The goal was nice, certainly, and then the shot that got tipped in was also pretty good. But it was mostly just a solid game from Erik Karlsson. No real defensive errors. And as I said, if you clean up the defensive errors, the points will come. And that's exactly what happened tonight. Erik Karlsson didn't have to be his normal all-world type of self where he made such fantastic plays to players with fantastic passes. No, he just had to be solid defensively, and then when you have it in the offensive zone, you make the passes and you get the good breaks when you're not giving the other team good breaks. Next is, of course, the power play, who I said the Sharks scored 3 goals on the power play today. I'm not sure if there was anything different they were doing in this game necessarily than what they were doing before, but what I did like, especially on the Couture goal, was the fact that there was a Couture goal. You know, Couture last season actually had a good amount of power play goals, and that was really because Couture at the point, he took a lot of shots, and he has a very nice shot from where he shoots from on the power play. He has a very nice sort of snipe. A lot of times he's able to go in, and it seemed like so far this season, in the first 22 games in the season, he really hasn't taken much of that shot from at all, really. I would say that most of the time it's been reserved that Brent Burns or Erik Karlsson or whoever's on the ice on that power play seems to be the guy taking the shots, and Logan Couture has been more of a pivot kind of guy. I don't think that's really a necessary position. I'm not sure if there's probably a stat somewhere that could tell me how many shots Logan Couture has had on the power play from that area, but it doesn't seem like it's been enough or a lot or anything like that. And so it was nice to see him actually score a goal as such, and hopefully going forward on the power play, he can continue to be that scoring option where he's able to shoot from there. It will definitely make it so that certain penalty kill structures will have to actually respect him from that area. Of course, Timo Meier's goal was also quite nice. They were able to work the puck around. Just in general, the power play was quite good. They worked the puck very, very well, even on power plays that they didn't score. I think they went 3 for 5 on the night, if I'm not mistaken. So it was quite good, just all in general. Again, you want to see some more consistency from this power play. Was this just because the Canucks weren't having a very good game? Is this a turning point for the Sharks? They've had games this season already where they've had solid power plays, 2 goals. They've had 3 goals in a game already this season at a point, I think, against the Sabres. And as such, I'm not sure if this can be viewed as much of a turning point, but I guess with Erik Karlsson getting in on it and there was some solid movement, hopefully it will actually end up being as such. Finally, I'll finish with a few other people. Obviously, there were 2 scratches in this game from the previous one. DeBoer had some pretty harsh comments that there were too many passengers and everything like that against the Edmonton Oilers. And so it seems he wanted to give a bit of a shake-up here, so he ends up scratching Joakim Ryan, something he has done earlier this season by scratching him for Heed. That led into the St. Louis Blues 4-0 shutout, so Ryan ended up returning right back to the lineup and looked okay during his few games that he played, but now he was scratched again after the Edmonton Oilers game, and Tim Heed came into this one. And Tim Heed wasn't spectacular by any means, but he has looked slightly better than he was last season, in my opinion. I really didn't like Tim Heed last season, but he was pretty good this game. It'll be interesting to see if DeBoer decides to go back with Joakim Ryan again after just a 1 day off, because I feel as though Ryan is the guy going forward in the season. I don't think Heed will really overtake Ryan on the depth chart, so maybe you want to get Ryan back into a game as fast as possible, or if you're DeBoer, you like the 4-0 effort, you don't want to change what the team is about, and you just keep Heed in the lineup. About Radil, I thought Radil had a pretty okay game. Again, it's one of those things where you can say he had a good game, but you could also just point to the fact that the Canucks were just not good, and I can't really stress just how much the Canucks did not look good in this game. I suspect Radil will maybe stay. Again, it's a sort of the issue where I don't think Radil will pass Suomela on the depth chart this season. I really don't think you would want that to happen. If anything, maybe Goodrow or Karlsson should be the one sitting out for Radil if you really want him to play, but Suomela seems to be the guy. I mean, once Thornton retires, who knows if it'll be after this season or maybe he'll play one other one or anything like that, but you want Suomela to be probably a third-line center going into the future. And we saw him get scratched earlier on this season as well, and when he came back, he was actually a pretty effective forward for the Sharks, so maybe DeBoer wanted to ignite him, get a fire under him once more in this season, so hopefully he'll return. But again, after a very good Sharks performance, it might be that he ends up sitting out another one. However, I guess since it is a back-to-back, maybe it's better to play Ryan and Suomela here on the next one, as they didn't play at all last night, so they might have a bit more energy than some of the other Sharks players, but it'll be interesting to see what DeBoer does with the lineup. But that will do it for this game. There wasn't really much to talk about besides, I guess, the goaltending and I guess Erik Karlsson as well. Otherwise, it was, as I said, a rather boring game. The Canucks didn't put up much of a fight. It was a very quick one in general. There was actually some nice hitting. There was a bit of physicality, especially Roussel was involved everywhere. Antoine Roussel took like 2 penalties. He drew a penalty. He was just all over the ice. Really, not necessarily in a good way for the Canucks, as you could definitely say he costed them the game a bit with all those penalties that he did take. But anyhow, that will do it for this review. The next one will be the Sharks against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. For the first time this season, the team that eliminated them in the playoffs last season. The Golden Knights have been struggling so far this season, so hopefully the Sharks can take advantage, as they've now ended their homestand 4-1-1, and they head back onto the road. Class dismissed.